Hello, everybody. Welcome to Humankind here in Sedona, Arizona today. And I want to thank John Strayer of Humankind for putting this together and inviting me to come on the live stream today to share with you all my music, my harp music, and a bit of my stories and the journey I've been on. So today is a special day. It's Father's Day, and I'm a father. So I just wanted to start off by just, acknowledging the fathers in all of our lives. And it's important, I feel, to honor that and send our love to our dads around the world. I love being a father, and my son is a beautiful boy, 12 years old, and he's like a real soulmate. I feel real blessed, and so I'm really in my father thing today. But I think what I'll do is I'll just play a little bit just to open up the space with the harp. I don't really know what I'm going to play, but I'm just going to play to that fatherly energy that is so powerful in our lives, and not only our human fathers, but perhaps even the Heavenly Father. So I'll just play to the Father on all levels, and perhaps as I'm playing, you can think about your father, your dad, and even your Heavenly Father. So let's see where the music goes. I'm just going to open myself up and see what comes through. Enjoy. All right, as I was playing that, at one point I was just having some childhood memories. It was almost a very kind of little childish melody there. I don't know if you caught that, but all of a sudden I was just kind of remembering things that occurred to me when I was a young boy with my dad. I hope you saw some images like that as well. So my music, some of you perhaps are familiar with my story. of how the harp came to me. Such an unusual instrument. Um, it was here in Sedona about 30 years ago, where I had a series of very profound mystical experiences here. I was led here. I moved here from Colorado, and I've been living in Aspen for about 10 years. I was a ski instructor, amongst other things, and just was living a great life. But there was something else calling me. There was another destiny for me. I could have stayed there. It was a beautiful lifestyle, and I still enjoy going up there, especially in the summer months soon. But there was something else calling me, and I was beginning to hear rumors of this place in the Southwest that had these mystical red rock formations and power spots and vortexes. And this was in about 1988 or 1987. And well, as fate would have it, I met a man who lived in Aspen who we became friends. And it turned out he owned a small cottage here in Sedona. And he said, why don't you go down to my place and check it out? Because there was nobody there. And so I did. And I jumped, after the ski season ended, I jumped in my truck and I drove down to Sedona from Aspen. And it was a warm spring day. And the canyon, coming down from Flagstaff down into Oak Creek Canyon, everything was just greening up. It was beautiful. And you know, this was before the internet, so I had no idea what to expect. I couldn't look at pictures of Sedona when I heard about it. I just heard descriptions of it, and it just was so intriguing. And when I drove down Oak Creek Canyon, and by the time I got down to about Slide Rock, I had to pull over. I was just so awestruck by the beauty and the majesty of the red rocks. And I was just overcome with this feeling, this emotion, and I pulled over and was like, I heard, as I was just kind of being in the moment, I heard deep, like in my heart and soul, the voice that said, home, home. I was like, wow. And I was looking for a new place, by the way. And so I knew right away that this was the place. I saw the creek and the beautiful rocks and the sycamore trees and the oak trees. It was just gorgeous. And when I came into town, I met the most beautiful souls. People living with an open heart and just very, very present. When they would meet you, they would just really look in your eyes. And it was the kind of thing like, I know you. And, you know, welcome to our tribe. And I had never experienced anything like that. And I was just like, wow, this is the coolest thing. So I spent a few days there, and I went back to Colorado and ended up packing up my things and moving down to Sedona a month later. And that's really when my journey began. I came here to live as an artist because I was like in my late 20s, and I was like going through my Saturn return. Maybe you know what that's like. And everything was coming up for evaluation or reevaluation. And I was just searching my heart, like, what do I want to do with my life? What's calling me? Do I want to be a ski instructor for the rest of my life, or is there something else there? And when I really sat with it and tuned in, what I felt was that I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to live as an artist. And I had done stained glass art since I was a teenager. And this I'll write about in my book, by the way, called Hearing the Angels Sing, a true story of angelic assistance. And you can see that on Amazon. But yeah, I had done stained glass since I was a teenager. And this was something I really wanted to pursue, was to be a glass artist. So when I came to Sedona, I set up my glass studio here and started making my stained glass windows. And I do a copper foil technique, Tiffany style copper foil. But I never really did realistic pieces. I was more into making kaleidoscopic, geometrical pieces, more like mandalas. And so I set up my studio here and started producing glass. And working with the stained glass, the sacred geometries, and the colors, what I call the color harmonics, with the with the sacred geometry in my glasswork. And what's unique also is I inlay crystals and gemstones into my stained glass windows, which adds this beautiful sparkle and luster and this energy from the crystals and gems that are in the stained glass where is reflected by the light. So I came here to pursue that, and I did. And then, but after about a year, I got a message that I felt there was something else that wanted to come to me. This wasn't it. There was something even bigger. I was going to get an upgrade of another mission, so to speak. And so I was guided by my inner voice that I was to release all my material possessions and acquire a Volkswagen camper van, and that I was going to be led on a mystical journey to discover who I am and why I'm here. And so I did. I got this van, and I let go of all my personal possessions. At the time, I was also reading the writings of Carlos Castaneda and the shamanic teachings of Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan. And Don Juan spoke about erasing personal history to become a sorcerer, to stalk energy and to work with energy. That one of the teachings was about erasing personal history, because of course our personal history, we get caught up in our story a lot, and that can really hold us back from attaining higher levels of expression in our life. So Don Juan taught to erase personal history, and so I was very much into inquiry with this concept. And what I ended up doing was I released all my material possessions pretty much that I had at the time. And I moved into a Volkswagen camper van, a pop-top Westphalia, 86 water-cooled, beautiful magical car like a Swiss Army knife on wheels. That's how we used to refer to it. But and I started sleeping every night out in the canyons of Sedona and all over Sedona, because back in those days, in the late 80s, early 90s, through the 90s, that the forest was open and free. You could camp and park anywhere you wanted to all over town. And it's quite a large community of people living in their vehicles in the forest here for many, many, many years, especially during the spring and the fall when the temperature was just right. So that's what I did. And when I came to Sedona, I immediately, being an avid outdoorsman, I was drawn to the backcountry and the canyons here of Sedona, like Boynton Canyon, Long Canyon, Fay Canyon, these places, Secret Canyon, HS Canyon, out there in the Secret Canyon wilderness. And it was there when I would hike out into the canyons and walk the sandy trails where I would experience a peace and a serenity that I had not quite ever experienced before, that I would often hike by myself for the most part. And I would often carry a Native American flute with me, and I would climb up on a ridge in an Echo Canyon somewhere in Boynton or Long Canyon or Fay, and play my native flute for the ancestor spirits that lived there. And I was really into learning the native ways, the indigenous ways of the native peoples that lived there, because I was, exploring their ruins and seeing the rock art and the petroglyphs and trying to decipher and receive a message and meaning from it all. So I would just play a song on my flute that would float through the wind, and I would just call forth the ancestor spirits and ask them to come to me and teach me their ways and show me the meaning and the wisdom teachings of the four directions of the medicine wheel. And so I was fully immersed in that. But as I was sitting in the canyon, and I would often find a place to sit and meditate in the silence, and what I experienced was a profound silence there, and an energy, like a palpable energy field exists out in these vortex canyons of Sedona. So I was guided just to sit and to get real quiet. I was guided that the answers that I'm seeking were inside of me, that they weren't outside of me. There was for me to go deep, deep inside, and that I was to discover and unearth the treasure within my heart and soul. But in order to do that, I had to enter into the deep silence of the canyons, and the canyons here became my birthing ground, because when you walk back in the canyons, they kind of come and they surround you, and they were like a womb-like type of energy. But I also, when I would listen into the silence, I began to hear a very high-pitched ringing tone. Perhaps some of you are familiar. If you come here and go out in the land, if you get real quiet, you can hear this very high-pitched, high-frequency ringing sound. And this is actually known as the ringing rocks phenomena. And I believe it's because of all the rare earth minerals and the crystals and everything that's in the rocks, that they just vibrate. They're emanating a frequency. So I was guided to just sit in silence and tune into this frequency, very high-pitched frequency. And as I went deeper into this experience, all of a sudden, this high-pitched frequency opened up, and it revealed to me, I started to hear music within this sound, within this frequency. And at first it was faint, but the more I tuned into it, the louder it became. And eventually I started to hear the subtle strains of some sort of music, and it sounded like orchestral symphonic sounds. And for a while I thought maybe somebody's out in the forest with me playing some classical music on a portable stereo. And but then I realized, no, that's not what this was that I was hearing, that this was something of a divine origin. And as soon as I really realized what I was hearing, it was a very strong, energetic experience, kind of like what you would consider or describe as like a Kundalini experience. That the energy really swelled up my spine, and my higher chakras, my heart and my higher chakras just really opened up. My third eye opened up, the top of my head, my crown chakra. And I was actually, on the sound that I was hearing, my inner voice was telling me, always, I was hearing, trust, surrender, and let go. And let the music, let the sound that you're hearing take you on a journey. And so as I sat there in the middle of the forest in Boynton Canyon, you can just imagine me sitting out there on a rock somewhere, deep in the canyon. And I started tuning into this frequency. And it just opened up to this glorious sound. And it was so powerful as I was hearing this that tears actually started to spontaneously start rolling down my cheeks. And it was very hot. I began to sweat, like beads of sweat were dripping down my forehead. And my hands were like shaking. It was a very strong, energetic experience. So as I progressed deeper into this experience, because I was basically living in the canyons in my van, I just went deeper and deeper into meditation and tuning into the sound, this glorious sound of the inner music. And eventually I was taken up into the light, and I was seeing, as my third eye was open, I could see into another plane. And I was just like I was being bathed in golden light, hearing this glorious sound. And it sounded like angelic choirs and symphonic sounds and angelic choirs. And as I was looking with my inner vision, surrounded in this halo of golden light, I could see there were some subtle forms around me. And as I focused my inner vision, all of a sudden came into focus and resolution that I was surrounded by a group of angels. And these angels that were around me were the cherubs. Now, at first, the chubby little baby ones, at first, it was hard for me to believe, to wrap my mind around of what I was seeing. But I actually kind of came back, opened my eyes for a minute, just kind of checked around, like, what's going on here? This is incredible. And I closed my eyes and I went back up into the light, and there they were. And they were playing harps and flutes and violins, just like we see the cherubs depicted in the classical Renaissance art, like painted on the Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo and other great master artists. And through my journey, I've discovered that the angels came to them too to inspire their art. And so much of the great art and literature and creative works in the world were inspired by the heavenly host of the angels. And actually some of these composers, I believe, like Bach, Wagner, they actually wrote about their angelic connection or visitations or visions and how it inspired them. So, as I write about in my book, I went on many journeys with this group. This began a relationship that I've had with this group of angels for about 35 years now. And I went on many journeys with them during these days. And I was on a very deep shamanic journey. I mean, living on the land, and I was doing all sorts of things, like working with different plant medicines and psychedelics that back in the time was highly illegal. But now, in this day and age, in 2023, we have legal psychedelic therapy, and people are having experiences like I had. So it's cool because now I can come out and speak directly and openly about my experience, whereas before I had to kind of keep it hush hush because people would try to discredit you if you said that you used hallucinogens or psychedelics to open yourself up to attain your gifts. And I encountered that from time to time. But so, as I was saying, I had many experiences with this group of angels, and they took me on many, many journeys, which I write about in my book in great detail. But ultimately what happened was I went on one journey with them when I was in this space. It was like a dark space. I was surrounded by this group of angels, cherubs, little chubby baby ones. They're interesting. They look like kind of little bodies, little chubby bodies, but their faces are like old souls. And in angelology, by the way, the cherubs are one of the highest orders of angels, that they actually exist closest to the throne of God, to the flame of God. The cherubs are there, and they're just amazing. They can move faster than the speed of light, and they can create all sorts of miraculous miracles and things the way they work. It's been so fascinating and such a joy and amazing relationship I've had with them and things they showed me. But I went on many journeys, and ultimately what they communicated to me was that I was to play the harp, and that the mission that I was asking to be revealed to me was to play the harp and channel the heavenly music of which I was hearing, which I call the heavenly harmonics. And they told me that if you decide to take on this mission and work with us, they said that we will teach you how to play, and together we will work as a team to bring a special music to this time, for this time on planet Earth, for the dawning of the Golden Age and the Ascension. And they explained it to me that the harp is perhaps the most sacred instrument on planet Earth. It's found in many cultures all over the world. And we have found harps, archaeologists have found harp from ancient Samaria that's been dated to 4,000 or 5,000 years old, that was played in the royal courts. As well as in ancient Egypt, the harp was one of the main instruments played there. When I toured Egypt with my harp a few years back, you can see the engravings, the hieroglyphics and the engravings of the harp player in many of the temples. And also it was found in Greece and all through South America, and then in ancient times, even perhaps in Atlantis before that, the harp was played in the healing temples. So they said that my mission was to bring this special music through at this time, and they said we will work together as a team. So when I first heard this and was having this experience with this group, it was a very kind of on-the-edge experience. At times I didn't know if I was going crazy or insane. it was so far out that I was communicating with a group of angels that were telepathically communicating to me. I developed a telepathic connection so I could hear them speaking in my mind. And I didn't tell a lot of people at the time. There were only just a couple of people I told at the time, and they reassured me to continue to go on this and see what happens, and that it's really happening, whatnot. So eventually I decided I would take on this mission, and about a week after I said yes, I met a woman in town, Ani Williams, the harpist, perhaps maybe you've heard of her. She's a wonderful harpist. And I bumped into her. I met her at the health food store, and I said, I'm feeling drawn to the harp. And she said, I have a small harp at my home that's for sale. Would you like to come over and try it? I said, yeah. And I could hear the angels saying, yeah, this is it, this is it. And so I went to her home, and she pulled out this beautiful little harp that had this kind of mother of pearl inlay of Celtic knots and other designs going down the soundboard. It was quite a little beautiful instrument. So I ended up purchasing it just for a few $100s. And it had a carrying case, and I put it in my van with me, and I would head out to the canyons, and I would sling the harp over my shoulder, and I would walk out into the canyons with my magic harp. And I would find a special place to sit, and I would take it out and just put my hands to the strings and I just started like this. Very simple, such a beautiful sound, the classic glissando of a harp. Truly a heavenly sound. But then as I was doing this, I felt like my hands knew how to play. And this energy started coming through where my fingers just began to move on the string, what seemed like by themselves. And as this was happening, tears started to just come from my eyes. My hands were shaking like this, and beads of sweat were dripping down my forehead. It was a very intense energy. And I later learned that there was one angel in particular that became my harp teacher. And this angel would actually kind of float above me at first. And as I relaxed and opened up, my nervous system could translate these subtle energetic impulses coming from this angelic being, that my hands would just move on the strings. It got to the point where my hands would move on the strings, and I would just watch, and I would just be amazed what was happening. So the music started coming through very, very quickly, and melodies and songs started coming through, and it was quite magical time. And after about 6 months of playing, I got the message that I was to go to Australia and to take my harp and go on a journey to Australia. And that's what I did. I took my backpack and my little harp, and I got a plane. I got on a plane to Australia, and I got a year's visa. I said goodbye to my family and friends, and I'm going on this journey by myself with my harp. There was something I needed to discover. And I ending up in Byron Bay in New South Wales. Perhaps you know this place, a beautiful, beautiful, magical place. But it was there when, after being there for a few days, I was in, I think, a juice bar. And I looked up on the bulletin board, and there was a flyer for a recording studio for hire. And there were actually little cherub angels on it playing harps. And I was like, this is amazing. And so I heard that I needed to connect with this person. So I called him up. I ended up going over. And for about 3 days, 3 afternoons, I worked on a recording with this guy where I played my first harp melodies. And he had keyboards and other sounds that he layered on. And after a few days, I had a little cassette tape of this little demo tape. And I took it out to the beach in Byron Bay after it was done. It was late afternoon, and I sat on the beach. I put the cassette tape in my Walkman and put my headphones on. The sun was lower, and this golden shimmery light on the water, it was just beautiful. And I was just looking at the shimmering light and listening to this music that I had just created, and it was absolutely heavenly. And I was taken up again. My inner vision opened up. And my spirit was taken up into this higher plane. And the angels spoke to me, and they said, this is future events of your life if you continue on this journey with us. And they showed me my music, a CD that I would create in the future, that it was in a catalog with other music, and they told me that this music was going to go out all over the world, and that I was going to become very famous for playing this angelic harp music. And it was like, wow. So what I did was I ended up leaving Australia shortly thereafter, and I came back to Sedona and recorded my first album, Harp Magic. And it really came together magically. And when it was finished, I made like 50 cassette tapes of this music, Harp Magic, and I started giving them out to the New Age bookstores here. And it started to sell in the bookstores. They were playing it on the house stereo, and people were really responding to the music. And all of a sudden, I was living in my van, and I was just like a starving artist. But all of a sudden, I found this music that people were responding to and buying, and I was becoming a professional musician all of a sudden, selling my music. So I told the angels, I said, hey, if you want this music to go all over the world, I said, I don't know anything about the music business. I need some help, so please send me some assistance. And I just said a very clear prayer, and about a week later, I got a phone call from some record company executives that were visiting in Sedona, and they went into the old Eye of the Vortex bookstore, which used to be across the street from Whole Foods. And when they walked in, my music was playing on the stereo, and it turns out they were looking for a harpist for their record label. And they just really heard my music immediately, and they asked who I was, and they got my contact, and they called me up. And they said, hey, we're so-and-so, and we love your music, and we're here to help get your music to the world. And it was just amazing. And they offered me a 5-album deal with worldwide distribution on that initial phone call. I was just blown away. And so I ended up signing a contract, and they took my first album, Harp Magic. They took the cassette, and they mastered it and made a CD out of it, and they started distributing it all through their international network. I started going to Canada and South America and Europe, and started getting just like rave reviews from the music critics at the time. And about 3 months after its release, the record people called me up and said, are you sitting down? I said, yeah. They said, your album, Harp Magic, has just been nominated for String Album of the Year in the Indie Awards at the time, which were like known as the Baby Grammy Awards. So that was so cool. I ended up flying to San Francisco. It was a black tie, red carpet event. And it was there where I met some very influential people in the music industry that are still friends of mine and have played an important role for me. So it was just amazing how quickly the music just shot like a skyrocket. I had instant fame, instant success. But of course, it wasn't always like that. After that, I went through some rough times. I write about in my book. Eventually, that record company got bought by a larger record company, and they didn't renew my contract, and everything fell apart. And it was a dark time for me. I was actually suicidal for a period of time, thinking like, this just sucks, you know. And but I pulled myself out of that, and now things have just continued to progress along the way of where we are today. And that's where it came from. So I'll play a little bit for you now. Just imagining the angels, that beautiful, glorious inner music of the spheres, of the angelic choirs, of the heavenly angelic choirs, what I heard. And I'm going to do my best to let you hear what that sounded like for me. So I invite you to close your eyes if you want, and you can just look up into your imagination and just see what you see. Look for the golden light. Because I work with this group of angels, and they're here with us now. And what they're doing now is they're opening a portals of light up into the higher celestial realms, and allowing this kind of celestial light to come in and just kind of bathe us in this healing celestial golden light. So this can be very activating and can really kind of activate codes and raise your vibration. So I invite you to just open up to receive that. And if there's any, as I play this next piece, if there's any healing you need on any level, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. We're going to ask for that now. So just be open, be receptive, and let's go on a little journey together. Just taking a moment just to be in the feeling of peace and serenity, allowing that angelic light to bless you, to bring healing to you, to inspire your imagination, to give you insights and answers. I'm just going to play a little bit more. So recently my music has been getting a lot of recognition around the world, and last year in 2022 I won the New Age Album of the Year in the Cover Awards, the Visionary Music Awards. I won the New Age Album of the Year in North America and Canada, and so that was pretty exciting. I also won the Hollywood Music Award, Music and Media Award, the year before that in 2021 for one of my songs from the previous album, Sanctuary of Light. But most recently also, my new album is out now. I just want to mention it to you. It's called Mystic Voyager, and it launched on June 12th. And this album took me many years to complete. And some of the songs I've been working on for 5 years, one of them, and a couple of the other ones came through a few years ago during the lockdown of the pandemic. And so far it's getting rave reviews. I hope you can find it on Spotify or Apple Music, Amazon. But one of the songs on the album was the first single I released last spring. And it's called The Long Cold Winter. It was actually a year ago, this past spring. It's called The Long Cold Winter, and I want to play this song for you now. And this just once again kind of illustrates and demonstrates how the angels work with me. So, you know, if you have a connection with your own personal angels, or if you'd like to, I really believe that we probably all have at least one angel around us, like a guardian angel, that how it's been shown to me is they're here to help us manifest our visions and dreams, our highest potential that is aligned with the highest light. And so we can develop this relationship. And so what happened to me last year, I was having these weekly jams with my friend Fitz, my guitar player friend here in Sedona. And we would jam in the afternoons at my house and just harping guitar. And one afternoon, we were just jamming, improvising. And all of a sudden, this melody dropped into the harp that was just very, very bold and very strong and had this energy to it. And we started playing it, and it came through almost like a complete song. And when we finished completing it, we both looked at each other and go, wow, that's amazing. I think we should live stream this on Facebook. So we did. And we played it again. And what we both felt was that this song had an Eastern European feel and it had a lot of melancholy and a bit of sadness in it. And we were struck by it. And we were like wondering, wow, what is this? What is this? I think we're tapping into something. And at first I thought maybe we were tapping into a memory of some sort, of maybe during one of the great wars in Europe, like World War II, or during the winter months. It seemed like the winter months, and it was very cold, and people were suffering and struggling to stay warm, and there wasn't enough food, and it was about all the suffering that occurred, maybe in World War II, or the siege on Leningrad, or one of these great wars during the winter months. And so after I played the song, we streamed it on Facebook, I got a message from the angels that I needed to record this immediately. So I just followed their guidance, like I always do. And I went into my home studio and started producing the song and recorded the harp parts. Fitz came in and did his guitar, and we got Mark Danislavsky, who plays accordion on it, and Fitz Jenkins, I believe, plays the bass as well. And it turned out amazing. But what was quite shocking was that as I was recording the song in my home studio, that all of a sudden the war in Ukraine broke out. And then all of a sudden I was watching the images on the TV of millions of refugees, women and children, old people walking in the winter and struggling. And I realized in that moment that this song was not a memory of the past, but it was a premonition of something that was coming in the future. And when I inquired to the angels about it, they said yes. They said this is a major war that will affect the history of the world. And it's very important in the song. And when it was finished, I was guided that I needed to make a music video with it. And I was shown a whole storyline, a screenplay for this song. So I ended up hiring an animator. I found a young award-winning animator who lived in Slovenia. She was about 25 or 26 years old. And I brought her on the team to produce the video. And she created an original work of art, of hand-drawn animation from start to finish. It took her about a month to do it. And then when it was done, it was just so striking. And as fate would have it, because I do tours here, I do backcountry sacred tours to the sacred spots here, the vortexes and the power spots, that it was like right when I finished the video, I got a call from some people who heard about me and they wanted to go out on a Jeep tour with me. And it turned out that it was a guy and a girl, probably in their 30s, 40s. And the young girl was in her late 20s, and it turned out she was from Ukraine. She was a refugee from Ukraine. Beautiful, beautiful Ukrainian girl, and classically trained in the music conservatory on the piano in Kyiv. And I invited them to my home, and I said, would you like to see my new music video? And she told me that her father and her brother were still in Kyiv helping with the war effort. So she was one of the first people to see this video, and I sat her in my chair in my recording studio and played the video for her. And when it was over, she looked at me with tears coming down her face, and she said, it must stop. It must stop. And so I want to play that song for you now. This is called The Long Cold Winter, and I dedicate this to the brave, brave people of Ukraine. Oh, now I want to say the other part of the story is that when the video was completed, then the angels told me that I needed to submit to international film festivals, which I did. And the Long Cold Winter video won numerous awards around the world for Best Music Video. And it won in Paris and Milan. It won in New York, Brussels, and it won the Los Angeles Cinematography Award last year for Best Music Video. So it's an amazing song. I hope you can check it out. If you go to my YouTube channel, it's Harp Magic. And if you go to my website, harpmagic.com, I have all my social media links and my YouTube link there. So please come and see all of my stuff at harpmagic.com. So this is The Long Cold Winter. So how much time have we been going for now? So I felt I would play for about an hour, spend about an hour with you today. So I feel I'll play one more song. And I love this song. This is one of my older songs. And it's a magical song. It's from my 2005 CD that I recorded here in Sedona. It's called Harp Dreams is the name of the album. And the song is called In Monet's Garden. And when I first heard this melody on my harp, all those years ago, and I heard the melody was so striking, and I looked up in my imagination, and I saw people that were in a garden setting, and they were wearing clothes, antique clothes from the turn of the century, the early 1900s, and the men had big derby caps and woolen vests and handlebar mustaches, and the women had this great bouffant hair with these beautiful hats and flowing dresses, and they were in a garden setting next to some water, and they were having a picnic, and they were having a very gay time. And I heard in my mind, the angel said, "This is Monet's garden." I was so fascinated by this. It was so clear. So I went to the Sedona Public Library, and I found one of the coffee table books of Monet's art. I started thumbing through it, and within a moment, I came to a painting that was like identical virtually to what I saw in my imagination. I was so intrigued and struck by that. So I started to read about Monet, the great Impressionist artist, and the way that he thought about light and color, and the way he thought about his art. And I was very moved by it all. And he lived in Giverny outside of Paris, where he had built his beautiful gardens. And I was shown that, and the angel showed me, that Monet had many people come and visit him in his garden. And philosophers and scientists and politicians and leaders of different from around the world would come and visit the master artist. And he would walk them along the garden paths as they would revel in the beauty and the color. But they would always end up on the Oriental Bridge overlooking his beloved water lilies. And I was told that many a vision, many a realization was had on the bridge, that the bridge at Monet's garden is actually a vortex. It's a special place. And it's a wish-fulfilling place, that you can make a wish when you're on the bridge at Monet's garden. So I was shown and guided that as I play this song, to invite you to come into Monet's garden with me and imagine being there. And if you're open to it, just close your eyes and see the visions of the beautiful garden with all the flowers. And perhaps Monet will be there to welcome you to his garden, show you along the path. And as you wander the path, you'll end up on the Oriental Bridge overlooking his water lilies. And just today, on this special day, on Father's Day, where we're all here together, that perhaps just be open to receive a spiritual gift today, perhaps a vision, when you're on the bridge. Just go to the bridge and see who's there. Perhaps something or someone is waiting for you on the bridge. So I invite you to take this journey with me now into the splendor of Monet's garden. just revel in the beauty of the sacred garden, where everything is in harmony with nature. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's been a pleasure to be with you here today. I hope to come again sometime. I send you many blessings wherever you are, and know that the angels are with you. Take care, and God bless.